Welcome to this Ubuntu 22.04 initial server setup on Contabo. So the post I'm going to use is already written. So if you go to bizanosa.com/Ubuntu22, Ubuntu 22, that's going to bring you to this post, and this is the one we're going to use to set up Ubuntu 22.04. This is everything we're going to do to set up our Ubuntu 22.04. So for this tutorial, I'm going to use Contabo as my VPS of choice. You can follow along with any VPS, but I will be using Contabo. So if you want to support me and you want to use Contabo as well, you can go to bizanosa.com/Contabo. And this will take you to Contabo VPS. And you can see Contabo is one of the most affordable VPS providers available. So if you want to try them, feel free to use my link, which is in the description, bizanosa.com/Contabo. And if you're on Windows, we're going to use Git to set up our server. So go to Google and search for Git. And you want to download it from this website. I'm going to click on Downloads and download it for Windows. If you're on a Mac, you can follow along with Terminal. If you're on Linux, you can follow along with Terminal as well. So download this because we're going to use Git Bash to set up Ubuntu 22.04. So in a moment, I'll show you how to deploy your server. But for now, let me come back here onto my panel, onto the Contabo dashboard. And here under VPS control, I want to reset this server so that it can have Ubuntu 22.04. And to reset it, I'm just going to come here under Reinstall, click on Reinstall. It's already at Ubuntu 22.04, so I'm just going to leave it there. But you can check all the available operating systems there. Installation without panel, definitely. And then the password. So I'll use this without any special characters. When you reset your password through the dashboard here, try to avoid special characters, just use numbers and letters. I will paste the password there and I'll paste it again, just show the password. There we go. And you can send it to your email if you're resetting your server. So I'm just doing this for my sake, but for your sake, you probably don't have a server yet. So the password is too weak. Let's make it stronger. Let's see if this is going to make it stronger. Okay, so the installation has started. You can look at the progress. If you come to the operation systems installation, which is somewhere here, OS reinstalls, it's going to show you the progress. It's going to show you the progress. For now, it's showing me pending. So as that happens, let me go to the Contabo VPS offers and we can deploy one server here. So if you don't already have a server, just come to this point and deploy a server. Maybe you want to deploy this one. So I'm just going to select that. And you can choose it for a month. You can choose the billing period that you want. It's for a month, 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. But I'm just going to stick with 1 month. And that way you can pay on a monthly basis. Now the region, depending on the region where you choose, your pricing might increase. So for instance, if I choose the United States, my pricing is going to increase by $250. Keep an eye out for the monthly pricing there. So European will just give you the normal pricing. And then the storage type, of course, you want to go with NVMe. So there's an option here, NVMe, 100 GB NVMe or 400 GB SSD. If you want faster servers, faster speeds, then you can go with NVMe. And if you want 200 GB NVMe, you can also select that and your pricing is going to increase by $3. So you can either choose this or this. And then the operating system, of course, we want Ubuntu 22.04. Feel free to look at all the other options that are available. We're going to stick with Ubuntu 22.04. And then the username, set up a password here. Make sure it's a strong password. Now choose a strong password here. And you can see they also tell you no special characters. If you add special characters, you're going to find that you'll have a problem of trying to log into your server So just try not to use special characters. You can get strong passwords. You can create strong passwords without using special characters. And then networking, maybe you want to try Kubernetes on Contabo, your self-managed Kubernetes. You can try the private networking feature. So no private networking for me. Bandwidth, you get that for free. You want an extra IP address, you can come in here and get an additional IP for $4, IPv4. And then any of the other add-ons, you want a backup space, all these other add-ons, choose the one that you want. Or if you don't want any, just leave them as they are and then click next. And once you click next, the next process is for you to log into your account if you already have an account, which probably not, or you'll need to create an account. So once you create an account, you may get an email from Contabo telling you that you need to verify your address. You need to verify your physical address, and you can use a billing item such as power bill, water bill, even a tax return. I think even a bank statement would do, as long as it's got your address on it, address and name. So the name that you used to sign up here, make sure that that name will have the address details that can be verified. Once you do that and your verification is successful, you're going to get an email with your Contabo dashboard details, your login details, and your IP address that will be sent to your email address. So make sure you look at your email as soon as you're done deploying your server, because the next step will happen on your email. So after that, you'll just go and log into your dashboard. If everything is verified, you'll just go and log into your dashboard. And to log into Contabo, you'll just go to my.contabo.com. my.contabo.com, and that's going to bring you to your dashboard. And you can come in here under VPS control. That's where your VPSs will be. So you can see my default user is root and my server IP is that. So let's use that to log in. If you have not installed Git, make sure you go to Google, you download Git, and then you install it, and then come down here and look for Git bash. So I need to open Git bash, and this is what we're going to use to set up our server. So if you're on Windows, you don't have to worry. You're going to run all these commands on Git bash. If you're on terminal, you can follow along. If you're on a Mac or Linux, you can follow along on terminal. So first things first, let's log into our server. And let me just copy my IP address, and I will put it here. So we're going to do root at my IP to log in. Right now, the only user we have is root, but we're going to create other users. So I'll do SSH to log into my server, SSH and the user plus the IP. Shift insert to paste in Git bash. All right, so of course I've already logged into this server before. So the non-hosts file is telling me that something has changed about your server and the key has changed. That's because the server is already in this non-hosts file with a different key. And since I reset it, a new key was created. I've got to delete the IP from my non-hosts file, and then we can try to log in again. So I'm just going to open it using Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to do code shift insert. So you can see it's telling me this is a location for the non-hosts file on my computer. Since I'm using Git bash, everything is under my user like it would be on a Linux computer. So I'm going to add my home directory, the link to my home directory using the tilde. So this is the same as that my home directory. Press enter and it will open Visual Studio Code, and we can delete the IP and then save. And now if I try to log in, let me do Control L to clear the screen. All right, type yes to add it to the known hosts file. And then the next step, we need to add our password. And this is a password that we set. Okay, so we are logged into the server as the root user. Control L to clear the screen, and then I want to update the server. Since I'm already the root user, I don't really need to do sudo, so I'm just going to do apt update and apt upgrade. So this is used to chain two commands. This is going to run, and then this is going to run next. And this simply tells the system not to ask me for confirmation. This is like giving confirmation in advance. So if there are any updates, they're going to get installed. There we go. All the updates are done. So at this point, go to the post I've told you, and I've said you can go to bizanosa.com/ubuntu22, and that's going to bring you to this post. And we're going to start. We've already logged into our Contabo server via SSH. The next step, let's create a user, and then we're going to set up SSH authentication for that, SSH key authentication for that user. So first, let's create a new user, and I don't really want to do a lot of typing, so I'm just going to copy everything from here. Copy and come back here, add user. And the moment you create this user, then add them to the sudo group. We're really not going to use the root user anymore. So new password, set the new password. I'm just going to use the same password. Shift insert to paste the password again. Enter, 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 enter to skip all this. All right, the new user has been created. The next step is to add the user to the sudoers group. Once we add them to the sudoers group, we can use them to manage the server. Copy, paste. Okay, now let me just open a new Git bash window, and then we're going to log in as a new user. So of course, give your user a different name. Mine is called the new user. Give your user a different name. So we won't be using root for anything anymore. So let me just copy that from there. And we'll try to log in on a new Git bash window. Paste. SSH. The new user at the IP, enter. And then the new user password, paste, enter. There we go. Now we're logged in as a new user. Let's try to run a sudo command just to see if it's been added to the sudoers group on Ubuntu. Sudo update. Enter. So sudo update command not found. I mean sudo apt update. All right, so this is a good sign. We can run the sudo commands. Therefore, we can just go ahead, and at this point, I'm just going to disable the root user. Usually you do this later on, but let me just disable it at this point. To disable the root user, it's somewhere here. Disable root user login. I'll open that in a new window. I can open it up with Vim. Now, if you're following along on Debian, because this post can also work on Debian 11, you should install Vim using sudo apt install Vim. On Ubuntu, Vim is already installed, and you can confirm that by doing just vi enter. Vi enter, and you'll see Vim vi improved. That means that Vim is installed. If it is not, just install it. Sudo apt install Vim. So I'll do Shift ZQ, and that's going to exit out of Vim. And we need to edit the SSHD file. Usually it's found in etc SSHD. So I'm just going to copy it from there. So I'm just going to copy this, copy, and let's search for this. So to search on Vim, just make sure you are in command mode by pressing escape and then /, and then you can paste, and then you can paste in there. Shift insert to paste on git bash, and you can see permit root login is set to yes. So I'm going to press enter, and I'll press I to go into edit mode. And to insert mode, you can see it's labeled down here. On Vim, it will be labeled. If you're using VI, it will not be labeled. So permit root login, we want to change this to no. Right now, we're just disabling the root user from logging in. And then once we set up SSH keys, we're going to disable password authentication. For now, don't do this. So I'm going to do Shift-ZZ to save. First of all, go into command mode by pressing escape, and then do Shift-ZZ to save and exit. I have a quick Vim tutorial. You can find that. Just go to Vim. If you just search for Vim tutorial Bizanosa, you're going to see I do have a video and a post. There we go. This is my video. You can watch it on YouTube. You can also watch it here, and you can find all this here. So this and the video go together. It's a quick tutorial that will show you how to use Vim. If you don't want to use Vim, you don't have to. You can always use Nano. So let's go back. We're going to start from SSH key login. But first, let us restart SSH. After editing the SSH configuration file, let us restart SSH, and you're going to do that by sudo service SSH restart. Let's just come in here, and we're going to exit and try to log in as root. You'll see that the root user cannot log in. So I'll just do exit to log out. Control L to clear the screen. And then SSH root. And the password. And you can see permission denied. The root user is not allowed to log in, basically. I'll just do Control C. Now, it's very important for you to follow along carefully. Just be patient and you'll finish everything successfully. If you skip any bits, you may end up having errors, and that is not good for your server and for you as well. So the next step is for us to set up SSH Key Authentication. SSH authentication using the public key and the private key. And you're going to see how to do that. So this is going to be done on the local computer. We'll have to generate our SSH keys on the local computer. Generate the keys. So if you're on Windows, the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to create a folder for your key pair. Create a folder for your key pair. If you're on a Mac, creating a folder is really not that difficult. You can just use make dir with the location so it could be something like make dir, and it will be put inside of .ssh. You don't have to use sudo for this. SSH and then the folder where you want to put SSH inside of the SSH folder. And the reason I usually do it this way is because I may have multiple keys that I want to manage, and this is a good way for me to separate the different keys, and I'll just give the different key identity when I need to log into the server. So if you are on a Mac or on Linux, do that. Make dir, create the directory, give the directory whichever name you want there. On Windows, you can do this manually. Just create a folder called SSH key folder, or whatever you want to call it. I'm calling mine that. First of all, create the directory, and the directory will be located in here. If you come here under your user directory, your Windows home directory, .ssh, inside of .ssh, create a folder, and I will call mine SSH key folder, And inside of this folder, we're going to have the keys for our server. So in the next time, if you have a different server you want to set up SSH for, you can just come in here and give it another name, and you can have the keys for that server in that folder. So that's why it's good to do it this way. If you follow other tutorials where they don't even add the folders, you're going to have a problem. If you set up a new server, you'll overwrite your keys and you'll not be able to log into that server unless you have VNC access to your server. Let's come back and we need to generate our key. So let me just copy this and I'm going to explain it once I put it here. Make sure you're doing this on the local computer because you're generating your keys on the local computer. So you're generating them and storing them on the local computer. So SSH keygen, you don't need to use sudo for this, you're on your local computer. So SSH keygen, this will generate the keys. This is a command that generates the keys, and then we need a type for the key. The type of the key we're going to generate is RSA key, and we're going to generate an RSA key of 4096 bits. 4096 I think is the highest, so that's why we're generating this, because it's more secure than anything lower. If you do 2048, it's lower, it's not as secure as this, so always go with 4096. And then -f, this is a file name. Now the file name, we've already set up a folder inside of our SSH file, and our keys will be called this. Our keys will be called that. Valtra Ubuntu setup, that this is what our keys will be called. You can call it whatever you want, okay? You can even call it my Ubuntu key, the Ubuntu key, whatever you want to call it, you can call it that. And once we generate the keys, we're going to go into that folder and you'll see that we have our public and private keys inside of this folder. I'll press enter to generate our keys. So you can add a passphrase, and it's advisable to add a passphrase, but for the sake of this tutorial, I will not add one. But for you, make sure you add one because it's more secure for your key. If somebody gets access to your computer, they take your key, they will be able to log into your server. If you have a passphrase, that will be a second step for them to find out, and it will help with security. So make sure you add a passphrase. For me, I'm just going to press enter and escape that. So the key has been generated and you can see it is stored there. Now the public key always has a .pub and the private key doesn't have an extension. So if you go into the folder that we set up, inside of this SSH key folder, you'll see that our keys are there. So this has a .pub extension, and let's go into views. I think I want to view my extensions. I'll just uncheck this, hide file extensions, and I want to show the file extension there, and you'll see it has a .pub. Now .pub, this is the public key, this is a private key. So the next step, we're going to need to add this onto our server. So let's just come back here. So we've generated the key. The next step is we need to upload it to our server. So we're going to use Ssh-copy-id. So if you're on a Mac and none of this is working, Ssh-copy-id is not working, you need to download and install Homebrew. Download and install Homebrew and use it. Okay, Homebrew installation. This is if you're on a Mac. If you're on Windows, nothing to worry about. If you're on Linux, also nothing to worry about. Okay, so we're going to do Ssh-copy-id, the path to the public key, the identity of the key that you want to copy, and then for which user we want to add the SSH key. So I'm just going to do SSH up to -i, and I will come back here. I will paste it there. This is still being done on your local computer. Now, if we come back here, I know I used the same name, so I'm just going to copy that. Copy. That is the identity of the key that you want to upload. I'm going to paste that there. And of course, we want to upload .pub. Make sure you're uploading .pub, which is the public key. And we are uploading it for this user. Paste. So there you go, Ssh-copy-id. And this is the key we want to upload. And we want to upload it for this new user. If you are uploading it for a different user, change the username there. Your IP address and everything should match your own server details. So I'm going to copy that. while I'm still logged out of my server. You do this outside of your server. So Control L, and I want to do that. Enter, and I need to log into that. It will ask me for the password, so let me just copy it in advance. Password for the new user, paste, enter. Number of keys added, 1. So the key has been added successfully. That's good. Now the next step is for us to try and log in with the key. Once we log in with the key, we can disable password authentication. So to log in with the key is pretty easy. You'll just do SSH. Okay, before I even go into logging in, let's just go here, and I want to talk about this because you may experience an error. If you do experience an issue whereby Ssh-copy-id is not working, that's not the end of it. You can still upload the keys manually. Log into your server and check if this directory exists on your server. If it doesn't exist, you will create the directory. And then inside of that directory, you will create the authorized keys file. And you can do that in this one line. This is going to create the directory, and then it's going to create that file. And then inside of this file, you can see I'm using Nano, because with the Nano, it's much easier to paste. So when you open this with Nano, you'll just paste it in there in one line. Okay, if you're on Git Bash, Shift Insert will paste. If you're using Terminal, I think it's Control Shift V, that's going to paste on Terminal. And which key are you copying in there? Come back here. This one, you can open it with Visual Studio Code, and you can copy it. So if you just do Control A, copy, and then on your server, so when you're logged into your server, this is done on the server, you'll copy in the key, you'll paste in the key that you've just copied, and then you'll change the permissions for that directory, and you'll also change the permission for that file. And once you do that, make sure you change the ownership of everything inside of .ssh. And you can do that by changing everything. You'll change permissions for the new user so that the new user will own everything inside of this directory. That's what this does. It gives the group and the user the permissions to own everything inside of this directory. So just in case you experience issues where you can't do Ssh-copy-id, you can do it manually, and this is how to do it manually. Let's see how to log in. To log in, initially you are logging in using that. Now we'll need to add the identity of the key that we want to use for logging in, and here we'll be logging in with our private key. So I'm just going to copy. Let's just come here and recreate that. So we're going to do SSH, and we want to log in for this user because this is the user that we set up. This is the user that we have set up the SSH Key Authentication for. So SSH that, and then the identity of the key, I can just copy it from there, but it will be the private key, so it's not going to have .pub. Copying, and then that's all we need for now. At some point, you're going to need the port because you're going to change the SSH port at some point. We're going to change the SSH port at some point, but for now, let us just worry about logging in. I will copy all of this. So this is the location for your key, for your private key. Control L. And you can see that since I did not set a passphrase for my key, which is a no, that is unacceptable. You need to set a passphrase when you're generating the key for a server in production. For me, I'm just doing this because I don't really want to deal with setting up the password. You can see I'm logged into the server. I'll just do Control L to clear the screen, and I can also close this other window where I'm logged in. Now the next step, once we log into our server, we've already disabled the root user from logging in. Now let's go and disable password authentication. So I'm going to copy password authentication, and let me just start by copying this. Copy. So if you don't want to use Vim, you can always use Nano. Where there's VI, just use Nano. Let's open up this. sudo password for the new user, copy. I want to disable password authentication. This way, the only way to log into the server is by using the keys that we've set up. So let me just press escape to confirm that I'm in command mode, and then I'll do / and then shift insert on git bash. On terminal, it's probably shift control V. So we can see password authentication. I'll press enter, and then I will press N just to confirm if there are any other occurrences of password authentication. So I don't see any other occurrence of password authentication. So I'm just going to press I to edit. And I will enable password authentication. Yes, I need to change this to no. And then I will press escape to get outside of insert mode. And then I'll do shift ZZ to close and save. There we go. The next thing, we need to restart SSH. So I'm just going to do sudo service SSH restart. All right. So just to be sure, we can try to log in again on a different git bash window. Okay, it's not yet saved there. So let me just come and copy. So make sure you paste this and you copy it somewhere, because it will save you a lot of typing. Paste, enter. And there we go. We are logged into our server. So I'm just going to close that. And let's continue with this new git bash window. I'm going to do Control L. And what is next on this? The next thing is firewall setup. So if you do want to install a control panel, most of the times you probably won't have to deal with the firewall, but just make sure that you have UFW installed. And I know on Ubuntu 22, it's probably already there. So if I check for the status of UFW, it should tell me that either it's enabled or disabled, but I know it is installed in Ubuntu already. Status inactive, so we can enable UFW.